Hello, everybody, and welcome to another episode of The Canadian Genius. So, for those that are kind of watching as I'm going, this is actually my third video today. I did the one on physics and the one on human energy and stuff. And I wanted, like I said at the end of the last one, to kind of talk about emotion now. Because, like a lot of this other stuff that I was just talking about, emotion plays a huge part in a lot of this stuff. Because emotion does a lot more than what we think it does. And the reason is because there's a lot more to emotion. Like, as a perfect example, like I keep saying over and over and over again, we raise people to be emotionless because we look at emotion as vulnerability. We look at weakness as unacceptable, and anything that makes you vulnerable makes you weak. So we look at people like myself and like Melanie Martinez and other people that are emotional as being inferior. And this is the status quo that we've set. So, how is it that we could possibly understand emotion if it's the first thing we squish out of our kids? Right? If we're grown up not to have any, how can we possibly have any? And then, how can we possibly master them when we don't have any? And one of the big things I find, like I said before, I mean, I've done energy healing and I do counseling and all this other stuff. And all the different people I've worked with, one thing is fairly common, that as soon as you start opening up a little bit, you start feeling very vulnerable. And it's typically because you start having emotion, right? Emotion you're not used to having. And because you're not used to having it, it really kind of throws everybody for a loop. Now, thankfully, because I've worked with enough people and I've seen it happen enough, I know that that's a natural outcome. One of the things, like I do energy healing on occasion. I don't do it very much because I don't really like the way people tend to behave. I normally tell people the same thing, right? Like I had a whole bunch of clients that I was working with, and one by one I cut them off because they kept doing the same thing. They would basically just in some form or fashion expect me to wave a magic wand and fix them. Right from the beginning I always explain that that's not possible. As I said before, with like Reiki practitioners and stuff that maybe help somebody quit smoking and they take credit for that. It's not about them. They facilitated the change, but the change wasn't them. Right? So the same thing, like it's not me. I can't make you change. Even with all of my knowledge and all of my understanding and all my sharing of this information, I can't make you change. But I can facilitate the change by helping you understand what's coming. I can facilitate the change by helping give you the knowledge to make an informed decision. I can't make you change though, right? Even if I put a gun to your head, I can't make you change. That's your call every time. And so I would get rid of them because they basically expect me to wave the magic wand and make them change. And I can't. It's not possible because we have too much power. Like, if psychic ability was real and I could mentally get in your head and force you to do something, I'd lose every time. Because, just like I was saying at the last video, the difference between the conscious and the unconscious mind, if you really stop to think about the two for a second, the conscious mind is about this big and the unconscious mind is about the size of the galaxy. Right? It is that big of a difference. And what a surprise we know so little about the unconscious mind because it is just massive. Right? And we are this little tiny tidbit. That's the conscious mind that we accept and understand. Well, unfortunately, emotions tend to fall more toward the unconscious. They're kind of in the gap between the two. And as I said, when we're trying to understand people with all like these radio transmissions between ourselves, there's no key because this person's a cell phone, that person's a boat, that person's a cow, that person's a fly. There's no middle language. Well, between the conscious and the subconscious or the unconscious mind, there is things. Because if there wasn't, there'd be no way to get back and forth information. Myself, I don't know if it's because I have the genius level intellect, if it's because I spent time to develop it, if it's just random genetic mutation, but I have tremendous interconnection with my unconscious mind. But I've spent years developing that, right? By giving my mind the freedom to just do its thing. I just sit back and watch often, right? Just let my mind wander and have these really great abstract thoughts. That's trained my brain to do that. But I don't know why I do that. I don't know if it was intentional, if it was random, if it was whatever, right? It's just, for me, it's just normal. Which actually should be another video I do maybe next about what normality is, because that's a big, big thing. And it connects with emotion, but we'll get into it as a separate topic because it's too big to just discuss as part of this. But one of the things we have to realize is that because emotions actually serve this special purpose, and like I said, a lot of it is kind of, it's not just about outward transmission, right? It's not about sharing everything with other people, but that is a part of it, right? Emotions connect us, which is why when we share emotion, we bond strongly with somebody. That's why we bond through experience, right? If we go through something traumatic, we always bond tightly because it was vulnerable. It made us weaker. It made us open and made us stronger because we bonded to each other, right? That's part of that process. Emotions are a tool of that. But yet, the problem is, as I keep saying, because we've conditioned ourselves to close off from emotions, how could you possibly have a good understanding and use your emotions if you're not allowed to have any? And the reality is, most people don't actually have emotion anymore. It's still there, but it's buried under something else. And the best way that I can explain it, the best language that I've come up with to show the difference, is to use the terms real emotions and fake emotions. Because that's really what they are. When you're taught not to have emotion, you can't get rid of emotion. It's built in. It's no different than having a nose, right? It's no different than having DNA. It is hardwired in. And so you have one of two choices. You can destroy it, which in sense means you literally would have to destroy your physical brain and that connection between your conscious and your unconscious and all your transmittable data. Like, you would basically have to cut yourself off from about probably half of what it means to be human to get rid of emotion. And that's not possible because it's too interconnected. There's too many ways to get around it. But we're a very adaptive species, and we're very committed to not having emotion. We are very committed to not having emotion. And so what the brain always does is try and find a compromise, right? Like I keep saying, everything is about balance. And that's what the brain does always, right? I need to do this. I can't do that. So how do I find the middle ground that everybody's happy? That I don't have emotion, but I have control of my emotion, right? Because how can you have control of something you don't have? It's like, I have control of the World Bank. Well, I don't have it. Well, I must because I have control of it, right? You can't do that. And so we create this overlay, and that's what fake emotions are. And fake emotions are very easy to identify because they do one thing and one thing very well, and that's overwhelm. Because when a fake emotion kicks in, it has to completely cover any real emotion, right? If it even leaves this tiny little loophole open, that real emotion is going to poke out. So it can't allow that. So real emotions that quick kick in and are overwhelming, which is also why people have so many panic attacks and they feel so anxious and vulnerable, is because they've created this overlay emotion that is designed to do one thing: make you not want to go there, right? Because if you look at anxiety, what is the whole point of it? To not do something, right? Whatever the thing that you're anxious about, whatever the thing is that you're afraid, that anxiety is overwhelming. It is instant, it is massive, and it's not real. It doesn't mean the impact is any less real. Just because the emotion was created by me, by my own brain and my own mind and my own body, that impact is not any less. That's something that everybody has to realize. It isn't, it's fake emotion is the only word that works, but it doesn't mean it's not real. It's a real sensation. It's just not emotion. It's hiding, it's masking, it's issue, it's deflection, it's program. And that's really what we have to understand. And if we understand things on that level, and I think that's one of the best things that you can do. Like I have always said with the brain and stuff, I always use the analogy of a computer, because I honestly think that the computer is our physical attempt to recreate the human mind, because it works exactly the same way, right? You've got the unconscious mind, which is all the processing power and the memory and all this stuff. Then you've got the memory, like the active RAM, that is whatever's actually running. And you've got user input, visuals, it's all very much the way our brain works. But it all runs on programs. But so do we. Right? Everything we do is a series of programs. Some of those programs are hardwired in, and we call them instincts. Other programs are taught. We still might call them instincts, but we tend to call them other things, right? As human nature, as justifiable, as what, like we always label them with some name, and we always make it okay that we have them. Even if we don't like having them, we still make it okay. And it always involves typically anything that's real, we make sure not to look at. Because, again, how can you cut yourself off from yourself and still see reality? It just doesn't work. Because, like with fake emotions, if a single piece peeks out, it fails. And that's why fake emotions are so powerful. But that's why their impact is so massive, because they're not real. And once you understand that, and are willing to accept that, then you can start changing it. You can start letting the holes show up. You can start letting reality peek through. But that takes a lot of time, because you have to really be willing to change and evolve. And as I keep saying, all of this stuff is interconnected. There's no part of this that's separate. Right? The stuff I was talking about with physics, about getting into the status quo, into this, I'm not allowed to change it, is all the same stuff. Right? If I'm not allowed to change my fake emotions and my programs to make me this mechanical automaton that's not human anymore, so that I can be strong and capable and absolutely never accomplish anything, then that's what I become. Right? So to be able to overcome that, we have to be willing to overcome all of that. And as I said before, with like girl self-worth and stuff, if we say that this is unacceptable, then it's unacceptable to look at, it's unacceptable to change, it's unacceptable to do anything with. So we first have to make it okay. Now it's okay to talk about. It's okay that it happens. It's okay to change it. You can't have it any other way, right? So if we tell ourselves that it's not okay to look at ourselves, then we can't. If we tell ourselves it's not okay that we have fake emotions, we're not going to change the fact we have them. We're now going to have to justify them. And if you look back to what I was talking about in the last video with the human energy system, that's why we as adults get so run down. Because all of those fake emotions and all of those issues and all of those programs and all of those justifications need to be powered from somewhere. They need to come from somewhere. And all of our energy is done with that energy from our human energy system. Which is why if you look at people, when they overcome some major issue like that, they say universally that it's like this huge weight being lifted off their shoulder, like they're being energized. Well, all we're doing is reclaiming what was already there, right? But if I have to always pay for that thing, then I can't use that energy for anything else because it's trapped in that thing. But if I can get rid of that thing or lessen that thing, then I gain more energy. Which is why when we look at people that actually have real self-worth, most of them are pretty energetic people in a sense, right? They're passionate people because passion takes energy. Most people are not passionate unless there's something that they can connect to that energizes them. And then that's what they're passionate about, right? Artists and creative thinkers and musicians and singers. You know, it can drain us physically, but emotionally it charges us up and makes us passionate because we get such energy from it. But life, all of life, can be the same way. We can get that passion. And like I said before, you know, we take all this stuff as given, right? That it's just so common and it's so normal and it's so everyday, it's become meaningless. Instead of realizing how absolutely amazing it really is, right? Adopting that childlike mentality of wonder and surprise at everything. that opens up that life. It opens up that energy to allow us to feel amazing and feel human and feel alive. We can't do it if we're telling ourselves we're worthless. You can't do it if you're not good enough, because that's where your energy's gone. And if you're always on the defensive, if you're always worried that someone's going to come after you or someone's going to touch you or someone's going to think about you and you're going to freak out, there's no room for anything else, because that's taking up all your attention. And so if we can overcome all of these pieces and all of these issues and all of these programs, then we can become better. We can become whole, more complete, more capable, more amazing people. But that goes back to the very first video, celebrity, right? When we do that, that's the big risk. We risk being seen. Anonymity is one of the most precious commodities on the planet. That's why everyone is so busy trying to hide from each other, right? Because we don't want that interconnection, because we got told we're not allowed to have it. We got told we're not good enough. Our whole lives, you're not good enough. That's the cost. And so anonymity has become a valuable commodity that we're not prepared to give up. But our emotions are a key element of that, because it's our emotions that we use most often to keep people away, right? What do we do when people get close? We get angry. We get defensive. We get emotional, right? Whatever defense version of emotion you want to use. That's what we do. And it makes people uncomfortable because it triggers their emotions and it triggers their fake emotions, and they don't want any part of that, so they run away. What an efficient system to keep people at bay. But if we fail to understand that all of that is program running, like I said, it's all fake. It doesn't make it less impactful. It doesn't make it any less devastating. It doesn't feel any less real. But it's ours. It's all us. It's all happening in our bodies, in our minds, in our unconscious imagination even, right? And it's powerful because we've dedicated our life to making it, to growing it, to building it, because that's kind of the power of issues, right? We have little issues, right? It starts off as nothing, but every time they get touched, we have to bring in more reinforcements. We have to make them bigger. We have to make them stronger. We have to make them better so they can't get touched again. They always get touched again. Always. So it always gets bigger. And we have to pay for that. We have to contribute that energy to continuing that perpetuation, right? So then we have less. And if we accept that most of what our thought processes are, most of what our beliefs are actually programs that are running, then we can decide which ones to keep and which ones to fail, which ones to eliminate. As I said before, I had done another video series called Mind Munchies, and I'll put another link to it on this video as well. And one of the ones that I did for that is called Lesson Number 1 in the Progression of Learning. I did 2 versions of it, the original and then the revised version. I highly recommend watching them. They're not necessarily my bestest work, but they have the right information. And one of the things you'll see is that the way that we develop and grow, we create this very unstable mass of programs, if you will, like components of our personality build, right? They start off with lesson number 1 and they create like this kind of reverse pyramid that's very unstable, and we have to create all these things to shore it up, to make it stronger, which are our issues, our justifications and programs in part, right? They're all especially issues. But if we let that crumble, which for most people is what a reawakening is you go through something, usually unfortunately traumatic, that makes their whole world crumble, then we can take all of those pieces. We don't lose any of them. They all just get out of that structure and they're all there. Then we can go, this piece belongs here and this piece belongs there and that piece belongs there, and that's gives us control now. We can make that determination. For me, I'll share my crumble because it happened. I don't remember if I was still in high school or just as I finished high school, but I was always this really helpful kid, right? I always made a point of going out of my way to help people. because I always told myself how wonderful I am for helping people and how good it made me feel. And always in the back of my head, this little voice kept saying, "Stop helping people." And I'd go, "No way, this is, people need help. I'm helping. This is good." And so I kept doing it, right? For years, I kept doing it. And then one day, finally, the voice said something different. It then said, "Why are you helping people?" And me, of course, having spent years being a smart ass in that sense, I had this little quip on my lips and was going to use it. And then I stopped and I thought, and I realized I don't know. And then I realized why I was helping people. And for me, by helping people, it made them less than me. And if they were less than me, they could not hurt me. That was my thinking. So I made sure that everybody I helped, I smacked down to keep them lesser than me. That's why I was helping them. It wasn't to help them. It was to make them so that I could explain to myself that I was better than them. That was the whole point. And I had a friend in high school that, oh my God, I smacked him down so many times. Like, we're not friends anymore because of me, not because of anything they did. Like, I just kept smacking them down because that's what I did, right? I was helping him. I was helping make him feel better and helping him become stronger and helping him be, helping him do all these things while I'm not paying any attention to what I'm doing and smacking him down to make myself feel safer, make myself feel stronger. And that crashed my world because the last thing I imagined myself being was an asshole. Right? I really thought I was helping people. I thought I was a really good person for what I was doing. Boy, was I wrong. And my whole world just shattered. And it took me a long time to put the pieces back together the way I wanted them. That's how I learned about lesson number 1 in the progression of learning, is going through it. But we see people do it all the time. It usually, like I said, takes a traumatic event. They get into a car accident. Somebody they care about dies. They get cancer. Something that all of those justifications and those issues that are shoring up that unstable structure just crack and everything falls apart because they no longer matter, right? Telling ourselves how good we are just doesn't matter anymore, and those issues fall away. Which is what the power of all of these labels that we create are, right? All these programs and all these justifications. We have to give them all labels. And it's those labels that we're defending. I'm a good person. I'm a great driver. I'm a wonderful parent. What does that mean? None of them mean anything because they're just abstract constructs, abstract words. If you ask somebody what a wonderful parent is, you'll get a completely different answer from most people. There will be a tremendous amount of commonality, but there'll be just as much difference from person to person because it doesn't have a meaning unto itself. And that makes it hard because, as I keep saying, we're about control. We're evolving out of it, but we're still in the middle of it. And so we want to control, which is why we don't want to feel emotion, because then we're in control. And because society has said we're not allowed, we perpetuate it, right? If you look at kids, most kids are highly emotional, right? We're built to have emotion. And it is a hard process. My daughter's 6, and it's amazing to watch her go through some of these emotions because they're so big for someone so little. But I try everything I can to let her have them, right? I tell her all the time it's okay that she's mad, and I let her be mad, right? I've gotten kicked and punched and bit and hit, and I worked very hard to teach her that's not okay, but I let her do it so that she can experience what it's like. And because she's not hurting me, right? If she hurts me, that's another story. But, most of her things weren't, she was not strong enough to do me harm, right? So I gave her that option. Not because I was expecting it or accepting of it, but because it was a useful tool for that endeavor. Other people don't have that luxury, right? Some people are more susceptible than others. This isn't entirely my natural hair color. This is. And one of the things that most people don't realize is that redheads in general feel pain different. They've actually done huge studies about this. I have a stepsister that went through nursing, and in one textbook, in one paragraph, they made that connection that redheads feel pain differently, and that's it. But it actually, years ago, it was such a big thing, it actually hit the news, and now nobody remembers. So for us, pain is a little bit different. So when my daughter hits me, I don't feel it the same way, right? It's not that big of a deal to me because pain just isn't that big a deal to me. So that's okay. Other people, it's different, right? Pain, some people, they stub their toe and it's like the world's coming to an end. So you got to kind of work with you, right? Like I keep trying to say, and as the point of that is we are all different. But once we accept those differences, and once we accept that we have emotion, and once we accept that those emotions are supposed to be big, but they're not big in of themselves, they're big because they're unknown. So our emotion is all this stuff and all this other stuff that we've added to it. And only by letting our emotion out, and only by facing the reality of them, and realizing that they're not that powerful, they're strong, they're immense, but they're not powerful in that sense. Like I said, with fake emotions, they're easy to identify because they come on instantly and they're overwhelming. Real emotion, there's kind of a gradual grow. It can happen fairly quick, but it's not instantaneous. There's like a moment at least of growth. Real emotion also can connect to old history, especially things like anger and resentment, right? Because we hold on to that stuff. And so those can happen quick because we have all this history. But then you'll notice you feel that history. It's not just overwhelming because you're angry and seeing red. It's you're feeling all of this history and you're seeing red. It's a completely different feeling. But until you tell yourself that it's okay you feel that way, until you tell yourself it's okay to have those emotions, and it's okay to be emotional, you'll never have them. And it really is very beneficial in that sense to work with kids because the average person has about the equivalent emotional capacity of about a 5 or 6 year old. Because if you look at it, that's when ours got cut off, right? Because that's when we get emotional. That's when we peak emotional whatever, right? Like our emotions just become bigger at that point because now we have to learn how to live with them. And as I talked about before in one of the other videos about the bonobo society and how the alpha males and all the prime males died off, all the young adolescents that are coming into this new, more cooperative society needed to be taught how to be part of that cooperative society, which in bonobos meant smack down. But if we accept that we're kind of on the same par, then we can kind of look at a 5 year old and see what they're like and go, that's acceptable, right? And I keep saying it again and again. There's a big difference between childlike and childish. Childish is bad, harmful, negative. Childlike is the way we're meant to be, right? We're meant to see the wonder and beauty in things, right? I can sit there and look at the most abstract thing, the simplest thing around, and think it just look at it. But I know the complexity of things that went into making it, which is what makes it just elegantly beautiful. And that I will talk about in the interconnectedness of people and stuff, because that's all part of that. I get that because I know that. And I'll give it to you guys too. So even though a lot of this sounds like it's gone on different tangents, I'm trying to get it across to all the different components of your brain that we're okay the way we are, right? We can be better, we can change, we can have emotion, we can be vulnerable, because there really is nothing stronger than being vulnerable. That is the strength, right? We look at people, and like I'll keep using Gandhi as a really good example. There's a lot more stuff I like about Gandhi that I'm not going to talk about here, not now anyway, because I don't want it to mess with what I'm talking about. But he is a good example for so many reasons. But Gandhi wasn't closed off and emotionless. He was open. He was so caring of people that he was willing to sacrifice his life for people, right? You could say the same about Mother Teresa, except for one problem. Mother Teresa always had a price tag. Her work was awesome, but never without a price tag, which in this case was religion. You had to be her religion, and then she would help you. She did a lot of great work. It was just my issue is the price tag, because I think, like what I'm doing here, I really believe that those that can should. I have this knowledge. I should give it. I'm not selling it. I'm not marketing it. I'm not forcing you to buy it. I'm offering it. Whether you accept it or not is up to you. And I think that's the way it should be. Do I need money? Absolutely. I'm broke. But I have the ability. And I do hope eventually some of this will lead to other things that will indeed help me get money. I'm not going to lie about it, right? As I keep saying, I'm going to share who I am with you. There are some things I'll never share because they're just not needed, not because they're not worth sharing, right? Like, there's things that are just either too personal or too little to really have an impact. There are a couple things I'm debating about that are, embarrassing and stuff, but we'll get to those as the opportunity presents itself. So it's important to remember that, right? And so I'm going to share my deep, dark secrets because they're not so bad, right? That was my deep, dark secret, and I use it to this day. I commonly tell people that I happily identify as an arrogant, self-righteous asshole. And everybody looks at me like I'm nuts for saying it, but it's true. I'm arrogant because we assume arrogance means superior. And I am arrogant enough to believe that my knowledge matters. I don't expect it to matter, but I believe that it could. And that is a sense of arrogance. I'm self-righteous because I'm sitting here preaching to the choir, right? I'm having this conversation. That takes self-righteousness to do that. But I'm using it in a good way. I'm not using it in a punitive way. And I am an asshole because at the end of the day, I don't care whether you take it or not. I really hope you do, but it's not going to hurt me if you don't, right? And so I learned through my exploration and my evolution that I am these things. What I did is made them okay. I celebrated them. I threw parties for them. And I turned them into positives. So I took that, my desire to crush people down to make them less than, to now being, instead of being less than, I'm going to be equal. And I'm going to do everything I can to help everybody else be equal too. Right? I'm not better than, but I'm better than. I have more knowledge than you. I'm better than. But I'm not better than. Right? And that's the dichotomy of humanity. And I'll explain why we have that too. There's a reason for that. But I couldn't do that if I didn't own that I was an arrogant, self-righteous asshole. It gave me the power to transform it into something that I hope will better the world, right? I'm not interested in doing little things, right? I've hidden for 42 years of my life. I want to share everything. I want to get all of this knowledge out of my head into everybody else's hands. I have no say what they do with it, but I want to get it out. And that took me 42 years to get to, right? Because I've always had that fear, which is why, like I said, I did celebrity as the first topic, because that was my biggest fear, was being seen. And what a surprise, right? I was a very emotional child. I'm a very emotional human being. Being seen when you are an emotional person is about the worst thing you can do to somebody. Well, what's the best way to overcome that? To go out and be seen. Because when you do, you're still here. Because really, that's what we think. That the worst that's going to happen is we're going to get destroyed. Well, remember what I said about that reverse pyramid and that idea? Being destroyed is a good thing. Because we get rid of all that issue, all that justification, all those useless programs, and our world will crumble, and we'll pick up the pieces and be a billion times happier for it. Which I would suggest, as I said before, I'm going to put the link to Mind Munchies down below. I would suggest watching those videos. Though there's one on the history of God, which when I get into God, I'm going to talk about that. Not probably in the same way, because I'm assuming it's evolved a few since back then. But it's the same. That's going to kind of be the start of my God conversation anyway, is talking about the history of God. So my older version of it is there if you want to see. But it's got some really cool tools. It's got the Pursuit of Happiness, which I highly recommend looking into. If you want to learn anything about yourself, that's a good one to use. Because you just, in the project Happiness, the center part is happiness. You change it to whatever other thing you want to learn about yourself, and you will. And if you understand lesson number one in the progression of learning and what that means and all those programs and all those issues and are willing to let it go and let your world crumble, you will be amazed at how much better life is, right? Because you're truly in control. All of these fake emotions, all of these programs are illusions of control. Having actual control is very powerful, and you can have it. You just have to pay for it because it takes a tremendous amount of emotional exploration. It takes a tremendous amount of mental energy to get there. So I will go and set this up and put the links on it and share it with everybody. So thank you again for listening. I'm not sure if I'm going to make another one tonight or not. We'll kind of see. I got a few other things I have to do, but I'm hoping to get a couple more done today. So if I'm wearing the same outfit, that I'm making them the same day. So thank you again for watching, and I'll see you later.